You'll understand when you're more successful, my dad declared as I ate alone on my birthday. That night, my aunt posted, "Proof of our star." It was my sister holding a trophy from her dance competition. I paid the $2,400 dinner tab, drove home, and terminated the car insurance, phone plan, and utility bills I'd been quietly covering. By sunrise, my voicemail was full, but I didn't listen to a single one of them. I, 32M, had been covering my family's expenses for 3 years, and they had no idea their golden child's lifestyle was funded by the son they constantly overlooked. My birthday fell on a Tuesday this year, and I'd made reservations at Romano's, the upscale Italian place downtown where my family loved to celebrate achievements. I specifically chose it because my sister had mentioned wanting to try their lobster ravioli, and Dad always ordered their expensive wine pairings. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd make an effort this time. I arrived at 7 sharp, wearing the navy suit I'd bought for client meetings. The hostess led me to our reserved table for 6, and I settled in to wait. 7:15 came and went. Then 7:30. I checked my phone repeatedly, but no messages waited for me. At 7:45, I finally called Mom. She answered on the 4th ring, sounding distracted. When I asked where everyone was, she paused before explaining they were at my sister's dance competition across town. She'd won first place in contemporary, and they were celebrating at the venue. Mom mentioned they'd lost track of time and suggested we reschedule for the weekend. I sat there staring at the breadbasket the server had brought, feeling the familiar ache settle in my chest. This wasn't the first time I'd been forgotten, but somehow it stung worse because I'd actually believed this birthday might be different. The server approached and asked if I was ready to order. I told her I'd be dining alone and requested the chef's tasting menu with wine pairings. If I was going to eat by myself on my birthday, I might as well make it memorable. During the second course, Dad called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. He launched into an explanation about the competition running late and how important this win was for my sister's portfolio. When I mentioned feeling disappointed about spending my birthday alone, he delivered the line that changed everything. Dad told me I'd understand when I was more successful, implying that once I achieved something worthwhile, the family would prioritize my celebrations too. The words hit like ice water. Here I was, a senior software architect at a Fortune 500 company, quietly funding half their lifestyle, and he was lecturing me about success. I finished my meal in silence, savoring each perfectly prepared dish while processing what had just happened. The total came to $240 with tip, but I barely noticed. My mind was racing through 3 years of phone bills, car insurance payments, and utility costs I'd been covering without acknowledgement. Around 10:30, my phone buzzed with a notification from my aunt's Facebook page. The post showed my sister beaming while holding a crystal trophy, surrounded by my parents and extended family. The caption read, "Proof of our star," with dancing emojis and heart-eye faces. 23 likes and counting. I screenshotted the post and scrolled through the comments. Everyone was gushing about my sister's talent and my parents' support. Not a single person mentioned that today was my birthday, even though my aunt had posted birthday wishes for me in previous years. The drive home took 40 minutes, giving me plenty of time to think. I'd been enabling this dynamic by making their lives easier without recognition. My sister's car insurance cost $180 monthly because of her accident history. Mom and Dad's phone plan ran $160 for their unlimited data usage. The utility bills for their house averaged $220 each month. I'd been covering these expenses since landing my current job, telling myself it was temporary help while Dad transitioned between positions. But Dad had been at his new job for 18 months now, and they'd never mentioned taking back these payments. They'd simply accepted my help as their due while treating me like an afterthought. I pulled into my driveway at 11:15 and sat in the car for several minutes, staring at my phone. The family group chat showed 12 unread messages from the evening, all about my sister's competition victory. None acknowledged my birthday or their missed dinner plans. Inside my apartment, I booted up my laptop and navigated to the insurance company's website. My sister's policy showed the next payment due in 5 days. I clicked through the cancellation process, selecting financial hardship as my reason. The system confirmed her coverage would terminate at the end of the billing cycle. Next came the phone company's portal. The family plan had 4 lines under my account, with me as the primary holder. I initiated the process to remove 3 lines, keeping only my own number active. The changes would take effect immediately, cutting off their service by morning. Finally, I logged into the utility company's autopay system. I'd been covering the electric, gas, and water bills for their house since Dad's previous job ended. I removed my payment method and canceled the automatic payments, though their service wouldn't disconnect immediately due to grace periods. By 12:30, I'd methodically severed every financial connection I'd maintained with my family. The whole process took less than an hour, but it represented the end of 3 years of unacknowledged support. I went to bed feeling strangely peaceful, though I knew tomorrow would bring chaos. Update 1. I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. My voicemail was completely full, with the notification showing 31 unheard messages. I deleted them all without listening and blocked my family's numbers temporarily. I needed space to think without their immediate emotional reactions clouding my judgment. My sister tried reaching me through Instagram, sending increasingly frantic messages about her phone being disconnected. She couldn't understand why her service had stopped working overnight. Her messages evolved from confusion to anger, demanding explanations I wasn't ready to provide. Around noon, my cousin texted asking if everything was okay because my aunt had mentioned my parents seemed upset about something. I thanked him for checking in, but said I was handling a family situation and needed some time. Work provided a welcome distraction. I had a project deadline approaching, and focusing on code architecture helped quiet the storm in my mind. My manager complimented my recent performance and mentioned potential promotion opportunities in the next quarter. The irony wasn't lost on me. During lunch, I calculated exactly how much money I'd contributed over 3 years. Between car insurance, phone bills, and utilities, I'd spent approximately $21,600 supporting my family. That didn't include birthday gifts, holiday presents, or the numerous restaurant tabs I'd covered during family gatherings. The afternoon brought more blocked calls and messages from extended family members who'd apparently been recruited as intermediaries. I ignored them all and left work early to avoid the stress of constant notifications. At home, I ordered takeout from my favorite Thai place and watched Netflix while eating. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely relaxed. No family obligations, no financial stress from covering their expenses, no expectations to meet. Around 8, my neighbor knocked on my door. She explained that someone had been calling the building's main number trying to reach me, claiming it was an emergency. I thanked her for the message but assured her everything was fine. Before bed, I unblocked my parents' numbers long enough to send a single text. I told them I needed space to process recent events and would contact them when I was ready to talk. Then I blocked them again and turned off my phone. Update 2. Thursday morning brought a new strategy from my family. They started showing up at my apartment building, but security wouldn't let them upstairs without my permission. The front desk called twice asking if I wanted to see visitors, and both times I declined. My sister apparently convinced one of her friends to message me on LinkedIn, asking me to call home because everyone was worried. I politely declined and adjusted my privacy settings to prevent further contact from strangers. The breakthrough came when my uncle called from his work phone, a number I hadn't blocked. He'd always been the family mediator, and his tone was more curious than accusatory. He asked what had happened and whether I was safe. I explained the birthday dinner situation and Dad's comment about success. I described feeling invisible in a family that expected my financial support while dismissing my achievements. My uncle listened without interrupting, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, he was quiet for several seconds. Then he asked if my parents knew about the money I'd been contributing. When I confirmed they didn't, he sighed deeply and said he was beginning to understand the situation. My uncle revealed that my parents had been bragging about managing their finances so well after Dad's job change. They'd never mentioned my assistance, apparently taking credit for maintaining their lifestyle. He also admitted that my sister's competition victories had dominated family conversations for months, leaving little room for other topics. We talked for nearly an hour, and he helped me realize that my family had developed a pattern of overlooking me while benefiting from my contributions. He suggested I give them a chance to understand what had happened, but only when I felt ready to have that conversation. That evening, I composed a long email explaining everything. I detailed the 3 years of financial support, the missed birthday dinner, and Dad's hurtful comment. I described feeling taken for granted and explained why I needed to create boundaries. I sent copies to my parents and sister, then went for a long walk to clear my head. Update 3. Friday brought the most intense response yet. My parents drove to my office building and waited in the lobby until security called up. I agreed to meet them in the building's coffee shop, neutral territory where emotional outbursts would be constrained by public setting. Mom looked like she hadn't slept, her eyes red and puffy. Dad appeared uncomfortable and kept checking his phone, probably dealing with disconnected services and mounting bills. They sat across from me in awkward silence until I asked what they wanted to discuss. Dad started by apologizing for his comment about success, claiming he'd been stressed about my sister's competition and hadn't meant to minimize my achievements. Mom added that they'd been overwhelmed by the sudden loss of services and finally understood how much I'd been contributing. But their primary concern seemed to be restoring the financial support rather than addressing the underlying relationship issues. Dad mentioned having trouble paying the utility bills without my help, and Mom worried about my sister's car insurance lapsing before her next dance competition. I listened patiently, then asked why they'd never acknowledged my contributions or expressed gratitude for my help. The question seemed to catch them off guard. Mom claimed they'd assumed I offered because I wanted to help, not because I expected recognition. When I pointed out that they'd been taking credit for their financial management while I quietly covered major expenses, Dad became defensive. He argued that I'd never explicitly asked for acknowledgement, as if appreciation should only come when demanded. The conversation revealed how differently we viewed the situation. They saw my support as a given, something successful children provided without expectation of recognition. I saw it as a sacrifice that warranted basic acknowledgement and gratitude. After 2 hours, we reached an impasse. I agreed to consider resuming some financial assistance, but only if our family dynamic changed significantly. They needed to start treating me as an equal rather than an invisible safety net. Update 4. The weekend brought unexpected developments. My sister finally reached me through a mutual friend's phone, and her tone was completely different from her earlier angry messages. She'd apparently spoken with my uncle and was beginning to understand her role in the family dynamic. She admitted that she'd become accustomed to being the center of attention and hadn't considered how that might affect me. The dance competitions had consumed so much family energy that other relationships had suffered. She also revealed that she'd known about some of my financial contributions, but assumed our parents were handling the arrangements. My sister proposed a family meeting where everyone could address the situation openly. She wanted to understand how we'd reached this point and what needed to change moving forward. Her willingness to examine her own behavior surprised me and gave me hope for improvement. I agreed to the meeting but set strict conditions. We'd meet at a restaurant where emotional outbursts would be inappropriate. Everyone would have uninterrupted time to speak, and we'd focus on future changes rather than past grievances. The following Tuesday, we gathered at a quiet steakhouse downtown. The atmosphere was tense but respectful, very different from our usual chaotic family interactions. I started by explaining how invisible I'd felt despite providing substantial support, while they listened without interrupting. Mom broke down crying when she realized how long I'd been covering expenses without recognition. Dad admitted he'd been taking my contributions for granted and hadn't understood the emotional impact of his dismissive comments. My sister acknowledged that her achievements had overshadowed everyone else's accomplishments. But the real breakthrough came when we started discussing specific changes. Dad agreed to take over all utility payments immediately and expressed genuine gratitude for past support. Mom promised to make more effort, including me in family celebrations and conversations. My sister committed to sharing attention and asking about my life instead of dominating discussions. I agreed to gradually resume the car insurance payments, but only if my sister maintained a clean driving record and contributed to the cost. The phone plan would remain separate, forcing them to budget for their own communication expenses. These arrangements would be temporary while they adjusted their finances. Update 5. 3 months later, the changes have been dramatic and largely positive. Dad has successfully taken over all household expenses and even thanked me publicly at my nephew's birthday party for my previous help. Mom regularly asks about my work projects and has started attending my company's family events. My sister has been the biggest surprise. She's genuinely interested in my life now and has started inviting me to her competitions as a supporter rather than just expecting my attendance. She also got a part-time job to help with her car insurance costs, showing real maturity. The family dynamic has improved significantly, though it's still a work in progress. They make genuine efforts to include me in conversations and celebrations, and my achievements finally receive acknowledgement. Last month, they threw a surprise party when I got promoted to lead architect. However, trust takes time to rebuild. I still maintain financial boundaries and won't resume the comprehensive support I provided before. They're learning to manage their own expenses and appreciate assistance when it's offered rather than expecting it as their due. My birthday this year was completely different. They planned a celebration weeks in advance, made sure everyone could attend, and even surprised me with a weekend trip to wine country. Dad's toast acknowledged my professional success and thanked me for my patience during our family's growth process. The whole experience taught me valuable lessons about setting boundaries and demanding respect in relationships. Sometimes you have to withdraw support to help people recognize your value. While the process was painful, our family is stronger now because everyone understands their role in maintaining healthy dynamics. I've also learned to advocate for myself rather than suffering in silence. My family couldn't address problems they didn't fully understand, and my quiet resentment wasn't helping anyone. Open communication, though difficult, proved more effective than passive-aggressive financial manipulation. Looking back, I don't regret the dramatic wake-up call I provided. Sometimes families need shocking moments to recognize destructive patterns and commit to real change. The temporary pain led to permanent improvement in how we treat each other, making everyone's relationships more authentic and sustainable.